I'm truly speechless.
Andy, on line 20, when Romney comes up,
1600
on line 20, when Romney comes up, that's when we make the group come alive.
That day, at the very first defending the American Dream Summit.
Stand by.
You know, leading up to this summit, many of our opponents on the big government side
You ready for either one?
openly questioned your passion, your willingness to execute a long-term grassroots campaign to rein in the growth of government and restrain.
What a group this is. And what a commitment. Hi, David. Oh, this is extraordinary. Don't you love rich people who are generous? He's great. What a guy. What an organization he's helped pull together. Congratulations to you. I don't know what you're doing tonight. This is something. There's a Red Sox game on. How can you be watching games? By the way, or you're too busy setting the clock? It's like watching the European socialists from the 1960s watching this guy. And while the Democrats in America are looking to Europe, the new conservative leaders of Europe are looking to America and looking at the America that was built by Ronald Reagan and supply side economics. About the economy, by the way, she said, you know, America has always been an on-your-own society. And there's a certain degree of truth to that, because we believe that Adam Smith was right, that by giving people individual initiative and individual incentives, that they would build a greater economy. That frankly, that when David Trump does well, doesn't make me do less well, it makes us all do better. When Bill Gates does better, we all do better. But she said it's time to change that. She said we have to become a shared responsibility society, we're all in it together society. So for her, it's out with Adam Smith and with Karl Marx. Look, she could Someone sent me an email the other day and said, you know, when Hillary Clinton thinks private sector, she thinks that's a new recruit in the Army. She doesn't have a lot of experience in the private sector. Have you heard her latest brainstorm? I know you've heard it several times during this conference, and that is the idea of giving every child born in this country a $5,000 bond, without regards to whether or not they were born in a wedlock setting, or without regards to the fact that the $5,000 bond gets paid for by borrowing $5,000 from the very child's future. And in my opinion, Hillary Clinton can get like the president of France, let alone the president of the United States. Now, all this can be kind of funny, to tell you the truth, it's so important, so critical. These are really critical times. I was approached some years ago by a friend of mine who's a professor. He was head of an education system in his state, and he said to me, Mitt, he said, what do you believe were the great inflection points in American history? And not being as bright as he, I said, what do you mean inflection points? And he said, well, if you look over the history of the country, you'll see there are points where everything changes. Culture, industrial competition, the nature of our developments, the military strategy, all these things change. He said the revolutionary days were such an inflection point, where we threw off Great Britain and where we redefined the relationship between the citizen and the state. Prior to that time, the view was that the state was the sovereign and the citizen was the servant. But after the Declaration of Independence, we identified the fact that God had given to the individual certain inalienable rights. The citizen became the sovereign and the state became the servant. And that, as the poet said, has made all the difference in the world. We became a nation of freedom, a nation of opportunity.
Now we face another inflection point, I believe, in America's history. Because of the forces that are impinging upon us, we're going to change course again. The force of jihad, the force of the emergence of Asia as a new competitor, our own domestic challenges, our massive overspending in Washington, D.C., our overuse of foreign oil, our education challenges, our healthcare challenges, our immigration challenges, all impinge on us to a degree that I think we're going to see an inflection point. And in that setting, Hillary Clinton stands up and says she's the candidate of change. And I think she would change America. Yeah, we'd go from prosperity to poverty. No, that's not the right course. The right course is not big brother, big government, big taxes. It's low taxes, small government, and get government off your shoulders, and allow our enterprises to be more competitive. Now, by the way, someone once said if you reach for your wallet, no, the best way to meet the best way to meet a Democratic politician is to reach for your wallet, and he'll be there shaking your hand. The right direction for America is to reaffirm the principles of conservatism that have always formed the base of America's success. Now, what do I mean by principles of conservatism? If someone asks you to choose one word to say what a conservative stands for, you might say freedom, values. I choose the word strength. I believe that a strong America is the best ally peace in the world has ever known. And if you want to have peace and prosperity, you want America to be strong. Remember what Ronald Reagan said. He said 4 wars he saw during his lifetime, and not one of them began because America was too strong. No, American strength it was that stopped Hitler. It was America's strength that stopped Slobodan Milosevic. It was America's strength that stopped Saddam Hussein. It was America's strength that stopped the Taliban. And it's the reality of America's strength, diplomatic and economic and military, that will stop Kim Jong-il and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. I was appalled that that man was invited to speak to the United Nations, and even more stunned that Colombia did the same. Look, this is a guy who's denied the Holocaust, a person who's called for the destruction of another nation, a person who has spoken of genocide, and a person who is seeking the technology that would allow him to carry that out. He has clearly violated the Genocide Convention's prohibition against incitation to genocide. And instead of being invited to New York, he should have been indicted in New York. Peace in America, peace in the world, peace for our children. It depends in large measure on America's strength. And our military strength depends on our economic strength. You can't have a Tier 1 military and have a Tier 2 economy. Russia or the Soviet Union tried that for a while, couldn't keep up. We just outcompeted them. So you have to have a superpower economy if you want to have a superpower military. How do you do that? I had a conversation some years ago with an old friend, Bibi Netanyahu. He was talking about his first service as the finance minister in Israel, and their economy was shrinking. He said as he looked at what was going on, he realized it was like the first day of basic training in the Israeli military. He said they lined everybody up on the football field. They said, turn to the guy next to you, put him on your shoulders. We're going to have a race. He looked at the guy next to him. He was huge. He said I could barely launch him on my shoulders, and I couldn't make it down the field. The guy who won had the little guy on his shoulders. He said, the guy on the shoulders, that's like government. And the employers, those are the guys in the race. And he said the key to winning the economic race is by having a small guy on your shoulders. Keep government small. That's number one. And that, as they say, is why I'm a staunch supply-sider. Now, you just look around the world and you see the power of supply-side thinking. Look at Ireland. Used to be the basket case in Europe. Then they lowered their tax rates for corporations to the lowest in the industrialized world, and jobs just came pouring in. You know, you can see France and Germany. They're looking at the picture. They see what's happening. But the you know, the Democrat three taxateers, they look at what's happening, and they don't understand it. They think everybody else is wrong, and they're the only ones that have got it right. It does remind me of an old story about well, I'll say it's about me. I'm driving home on Route 95 in Boston, and my wife calls and says, Mitt, are you on 95 coming home? I said, yes. She said, well, you better watch out. They say on the TV that there's an idiot driving the wrong way on the interstate highway. And I said, well, it's not just one idiot, it's hundreds of them. That's the way Democrats think about taxes. Let me tell you where I stand on taxes. First, I want to kill the death tax once and for all. And I want to make the Bush tax cuts permanent. I want to lower marginal tax rates for all Americans. Now, which of these you get depends on how loud you clap for each one, so pay attention. I want to hold the line on Social Security taxes. I want to stop the inflation creep of the alternative minimum tax. And I want to lower corporate taxes. Now, if you want to see more jobs and better wages and more government revenue, then the idea is to get corporate taxes down. Ours are the highest in the industrialized world, right there next to Japan. Some people say we're ahead, some say we're slightly below. But one thing's clear, look at Japan's anemic growth. That's not what we want. So lower corporate taxes. And then finally, one more thing. You know, I say on the campaign trail, it's not fair that we get taxed when we earn our money, taxed when we save our money, and taxed when we die. And I've already talked about the death tax. Let me talk about savings. Under my plan, for modest income and middle income American families, $200,000 in income a year and less, there should be a new tax rate on savings. And the tax rate on interest, dividends, and capital gains should be absolutely zero. Proud to be the only leading GOP candidate, or Democratic candidate for that matter, that has signed the tax pledge from the Americans for Tax Reform. That's something Grover Norquist put together. And obviously, yeah, it's a big deal. In a race like this, with so many people saying they're for lowering taxes, I wanted to get out there and make sure people heard me loud and clear. I'm committed to lowering taxes, and I'm just as committed to lowering spending. Unfortunately, increased spending on government programs has become the standard by which Congress measures their commitment to solving a problem. They bought into this idea that those who are promoting a culture of dependency are selling, and that is that spending is the measure of how much you care. I used to try that on my parents at Christmas time. Didn't work. I've made a pledge to the American people, and I'll repeat it here tonight. If Congress sends me appropriations bills which exceed inflation less 1%, I'll veto those bills. And if Congress doesn't have the stomach to do the cutting themselves, then give me the line on a veto that other governors have, because I like to veto, by the way. I did a lot of that. I sort of miss vetoing. Actually, as governor, I vetoed line items 844 times. I can't wait to do that in Washington. Now, you may have seen or perhaps heard of my ad about Republican spending. When we had both branches in the government, both the legislative and executive branch, we sometimes didn't act much like Republicans. We spent too much, we earmarked too much, and our ethical standards became the punchline for Jay Leno. When Republicans act like Democrats, America loses. It's time for Republicans to act like Republicans. the way, I know what it's like to lead in tough circumstances. As David said, I came into my job and there was a $3 billion budget gap facing me. And then I looked at my legislature and it's 85% Democrat. And, you know, there were states across the country raising taxes, even Republican states looking at the big deficits because there was a recession going on. The combination of those circumstances is pretty unusual. And of course I had the Boston Globe nipping at my heels as well, calling for higher taxes. By the way, there's only one tax I would sign. That's a tax on newspapers that print bad stories. We'll solve the budget deficit in no time. But the legislature and I did not raise taxes. Instead, I cut spending. And because I cut spending, when the revenues came back because we were attracting jobs because of our having kept spending down, we were able to put that excess money into a rainy day fund and save for our future. And by the way, I also cut taxes. I made the investment tax cut permanent. We also created a manufacturing tax credit. We gave seniors support they needed for their real estate taxes. We enacted sales tax holidays, and we made commuting expenses tax deductible. I don't like commuter taxes. And then there's one more I want to tell you, one of my favorite stories. The legislature passed a bill, this is hard to believe. They passed a bill calling for a retroactive $250 million capital gains tax hike. A retroactive hike. Now in my state I had the power to amend bills and send them back. Now they could throw out my amendment or they could adopt it. Now how was I going to get the Democratic legislature to accept my amendment? Because my amendment said instead of a $250 million tax hike, there'd be a $250 million capital gains tax rebate. Well, that was their reaction when they saw my amendment. But I had an idea. I went to the Department of Revenue and I said, I'd like you to fill out an official bill. Calculate for each person in the Commonwealth how much more taxes they'll owe if the legislature gets their way, and send every citizen the bill in the mail. And so those tax bills went out from the Department of Revenue, and they got this bill, and they called their legislator. And as Everett Dirksen used to say, when they felt the heat, they saw the light, and they passed my amendment. Things you have to do to keep our economy strong, as you know. I believe in opening markets to American goods around the world. And I know the Democrats are going to be singing that siren song of protectionism. It would be good for about 5 years, and then America's products would become more and more uncompetitive, and our future would be bleak indeed. The right answer is not to put up moats around America, but instead to say that America is strong enough to compete with anybody in the world. And you know, I spent a career in the private sector. I spent a career, well, I visited some 20 countries, doing business rather in some 20 countries, probably visited over 40, doing work to negotiate investments, doing work to help manage businesses and so forth around the world. And I know what it takes to strengthen our economy. I know why jobs come in and why jobs go. And I think it's high time that in the White House we had a president who's actually spent a good deal of time in the private sector so that he can build America's economy. Mention one more thing, and that is, you know, in the international world, our products carry a very heavy load. It's known as embedded taxes. It's estimated that our products face about a $100 billion disadvantage around the world. And the reason for that is that because of a WTO ruling, they say that the taxes Europeans put on their goods, direct taxes like the VAT, those the government can refund to exporters. But the taxes that are embedded in our products, indirect taxes, like income taxes, those we can't refund to exporters. And as a result, we have an unlevel playing field around the world. And if I'm president, I'm going to go to work to make sure that our trade is on a level playing field around the world. You know, liberals look at the challenges in the world, this inflection point, if you will, and they want to turn to the source of what they think America's strength is. And because they've all spent their entire life in government, or suing people, one or the other, they think that America's strength comes from the fact that we have a great government. And we do have a great government, but that's not the source of America's strength. The source of America's strength is the American people. Hardworking, risk-taking, energetic, faith-loving, family-oriented American people. That's the source of our strength, always has been, always will be. And the world is a safer and more prosperous place because of the American people and because of the greatness of this great nation. And it comes at a price. I was at the airport in Boston just a few years ago when I was governor, when a soldier was coming home. Not off the passenger ramp, but down the conveyor belt from the luggage compartment. It was a casket. And a few soldiers and I and some state police officers and a couple of friends of the family were there at the side of that casket. And as it came down that conveyor belt, boy, I'll tell you, tears welled in my eyes, and I put my hand on my heart, and I looked up into the terminal, and there across all the windows in that terminal were passengers who'd stopped to put their hand on their heart. We love this country. We love the people who've sacrificed for this country. It is a great nation because of our great freedoms, and for those who shed their blood that we might enjoy this freedom. Let me just offer one last brief experience. The former Prime Minister of Israel, Shimon Peres, was in Boston speaking to a small group in an apartment. Someone asked him what he thought about the war in Iraq. And he said, you know, before I respond to that, I need to put it in context. He said, America is unique in the history of the world. He said, in the history of the world, whenever there's been war, the nation that wins takes land from the nation that loses, because land has been the source of value on the planet from the beginning. One nation, he said, has laid down hundreds of thousands of lives, this during the last century, and taken no land. No land from Germany, no land from Japan, no land from Korea. America. America is unique. America will fight for liberty, for itself, for its children and grandchildren, for liberty-loving people around the world. Colin Powell added that the only land we took in that great war was enough land to bury our dead. It is essential that this nation remain strong, that this nation build upon the economic vitality that has made us the power of the earth. It is essential that we have a strong military and a strong economy and strong families. This is a great nation. It is the hope of the earth. Thank you so very much.